if people are thinking that you shouldn't have that role, you think you have to prove yourself in that role, you probably weren't right for the role. It's actually about ensuring that you're already seen as the leader before you're given the job. Key part of my role even now is constantly ensuring I have the best players on the field, right? The best people within the business. And that's not just from a skills perspective, that's a fit and culture and their own vision. The CEO shouldn't actually be needed to run the business. They should be able to step away and the business should be able to run.
We are talking all about being a CEO.
Business Focus.
Welcome to Business Focus. Of course, we're here to give you insights, new ideas, new tech, things you can take back into your role to help you get ahead. And this week, we are talking all about being a CEO. Do you want to be one? Could you be a good one? And because I don't have any of the answers to that, I've got Ross Sardi with me again. Ross, welcome.
Thanks for having me back. First time must have gone all right, I guess.
Yeah, well, you're also my boss. I have to invite you back. It's expected. But no, look, the key thing here is you've obviously done a very good job as CEO, and we'll get you to validate that statement shortly. But this is a little bit self-serving for me as well, because I have personally sort of gone between thinking I want to take that next step up at times, sometimes going, actually, I'm quite content at the C level below that. And I'm sure there's a lot of people like me that maybe either have a little bit of imposter syndrome or just simply are not quite sure what it would take to do that job well. So I'm keen to draw on your experience, the experience of your peers, and really dive into, in your view, what has made you successful, what would make others successful, what are the things you already wish you had known when you started the role that would have helped you maybe avoid some early mistakes, potentially, if you made any, who knows.
Sure.
Let's find out if you're human.
Look,
okay.
I would say though, I mean, of all what things you said there, probably the thing that does make you suitable is the fact that you have the imposter syndrome, because I actually think that's, like, everyone has it, that otherwise, I think if you don't have that kind of level of a doubt sometimes, or, then you're probably kind of not
sociopath.
You're not aware enough, right? Like, I think there's a level of self-awareness that creates that. But yeah, that's pretty normal. And I said, I think actually makes someone kind of a better candidate for the role in a lot of ways.
Okay, well, strong start. Yeah, it's always those people who just have that level of just innate self-belief that I can't quite align with. I am capable of this job. I am certainly more capable than the alternatives. Pick me, and it's quite hard to be that person.
You don't know what's going on in their head either, right?
That's true.
I'm sure you've heard before, those people that are outwardly like that are sometimes the ones with the greatest level of self-doubt.
Maybe them saying that is their way of pushing out that imposter syndrome or burying it deep down to kind of just be able to function, maybe.
This has become a self-help podcast very quickly.
All right, well, let's wrap it up. Thanks for coming in. All right, we'll stay on our lane with that one. Okay, so let's actually dive into your experience first. Talk to us about how you got to be in the role you're in, and what you have done since, like in the time that you've been CEO to now. What are some of your greatest achievements, or what you hang your hat on?
So I guess, wind back to maybe the start of my journey with First Focus, coming in as the state manager for our WA branch then. And when I say WA branch, it was kind of a WA cupboard, maybe. I mean, It was a pretty small office. It was a storeroom in the back of someone else's business that we'd subleased. There wasn't much there. The first thing that within a couple of weeks, I already found myself having opinions, I guess, of how this business was doing things, let's say, differently to how I would have done them. But I think that in itself is a really important part of wanting to progress. Like, you have to have an opinion. And you have to have some sort. You talked about self-belief. I mean, you have to have some sort of belief that your way is, at least your vision of it is better, right? And that sounds a little bit arrogant, I guess. It in some ways said it needs to start from that, because if you don't have a view, then one of the most important things to talk about as a CEO is being able to have a vision and articulate that vision and get other people behind it, right? So you have to have a view, and it can't just be a consensus of other people's views, right? And so I found myself early on kind of having some ideas about how I would do things a little differently. and was fortunate enough that Peter, the owner of the business, and at the time, the general manager that we had, were receptive enough to listen to those views and give me the space to actually enact those ideas. And I mean, you have to then be able to deliver.
Yeah.
Right? But that creates the track record in going, okay, well, let's give this person something else, right? And let's give them something else. And so ultimately that's like, it was that led me all the way through to the CEO position. It wasn't a deliberate strategy of getting a title. It wasn't a deliberate role that became open. It was very much okay, well, here's something else, and well, here's another thing that I think I can impact, or here's another area of the business that needs to be looked at. And the role broadened and broadened to the point that one day we're like, well, I guess, what does that make the title? It wasn't as deliberate and as a big step change. It was evolutionary.
It was like a consecutive period of having ideas that were well thought out that you could action effectively, and delivering on what you had stated, or actually proving that the idea was in practice exactly as outlined, and doing that enough times. And then they're like, well,
yeah, it's like more and more under your remit. And then it got to the point where I think it was finance was the last team that was still reporting directly to Peter. And we had a change of finance manager, or at the time, and I think that was I guess, why don't you hire them this time, and they report to you. And it was then that we kind of got to the point where Peter already wasn't there as much and wasn't running the business as much, and the decision was made that he step out for a period of time, a 12-month period,
which became
permanent. And so, it wasn't you'd have to ask him how deliberate that was from his side. But I don't think, if you wound the clock back 2 years prior to that, it wasn't like I was like, 2 years from now, I'm going to be the CEO. It was very much, I've got some ideas and I think I know how we should, do these things. And so it's definitely having some, opinions, self-belief, and the ability to execute through others, because it's at some point you're not a direct contributor anymore. You're you're having to get others to deliver, right? So
how hard was that transition, going from direct contributor to I actually have to enable others, get them to buy into this vision to get them
extremely
the
difficult,
tools. Right?
Okay. And littered with mistakes, right? In terms of going too hard on other people to deliver something, or not setting them up for success, or not being clear enough in something, or unrealistic in goal. I mean, you don't get it right on first go, and surrounded by good people as well. And so the sports team analogy, around your job is to coach the team, but ultimately your job's a lot easier if you have great players on the field, right? And so a coach's job is to make sure they're constantly building the right team, and then aligning them under a clear vision and with clear goals and realistic, and obviously heaps of other stuff that goes along with it. But that mentality stayed with me today. It's the reason you're sitting here today, right? I mean, it's ultimately that. It's because my key part of my role even now is constantly ensuring I have the best players on the field, right? The best people within the business. And that's not just from a skills perspective, that's a fit and culture and their own vision. I didn't turn up saying I wanted to do a podcast. I turned up saying that I wanted to, great person who has a vision of how we grow organically, right? I mean, that's ultimately what the role becomes more and more, right? Is you're very much focused on the vision and the what, but the how you go about it.
Yeah.
How you go about it is up to you.
Given you went about it more in an organic sort of, self-fulfilling way, maybe if that's the right way to put it, but did that mean that it was less scary to go through those stages? It was just this, consecutive series of just good choices that got you sort of up the ladder, rather than, hey, there's a big promotion here. It wasn't like this huge step change at any point.
Yeah, and I guess there's lots of little scary points along the way. And if anything, the scarier ones are probably the early, as you know, I do these kind of monthly video kind of updates to the whole company. Well, the scariest one was the first, first time you actually I've got to stand up in front of everyone and talk about all these things that we're doing or want to do and challenge. I mean, that each one of those little steps has its own level of anxiety, I guess, that comes along with it. But yeah, it wasn't a giant all-in-one go change. But there's still a level of, I guess, expectation that comes from having the title, right? And especially from a new customer or a new staff member who hasn't been with you on that journey, right? Because they're going to see you very differently.
Well, yeah, but I was also thinking it must be difficult to supersede a lot of the people who were in the business maybe before you, or even, maybe came on at the same time as you, and they're not going ahead in the same way. And I wonder if that for you and for other people, who are in a similar situation, if it's quite that imposter syndrome we're talking about, that desire to really prove to them, everyone else, that you deserve this and you're the right person for it, or do you have to sort of try and almost be a different version of yourself to kind of prove that?
My belief here, and this I think is for every bump up in leadership level or management level, right, is that whether you're in a service desk or account management or project team and are stepping up to lead that team, or you said any step up, if people are thinking that you shouldn't have that role, you think you have to prove yourself in that role, you probably weren't right for the role. And it's actually about ensuring that you're already seen as the leader before you're given the job. And so, like I said, your results tend to speak for themselves, or how you've helped others achieve their results, to the point that when a decision is made, it's kind of like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Right.
Because I think, you said we've all been in teams where someone has been elevated out of the team to lead the team. And yeah, you don't, it has to be a organic, natural progression, or I think if you've got doubters in the team,
maybe it's harder coming in from the outside, like you were saying before, where you've never been seen before. Who is this person? Why are they suddenly a good fit?
Yeah, there's pros and cons to both. I mean, obviously this is the one place I've been the CEO. I think it's a lot scarier thinking about joining a new place as a CEO, because am I cutting off someone's did someone internally want that role? They're going to know more than me about the business. I'm going to have to bring something quickly. All those kind of thoughts. And I mean, like yourself joining the company now, right? You come in on top of inherited team, and those thoughts go through your mind, right?
Yeah. Look, first few weeks for me, I was like, I can't add value. I don't know as much as the people who are reporting to me. I don't know where to find things, and yeah, it's hard. It is hard to feel like you justify the position above these other people. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of like the whole hierarchy thing and all that, but the reality is that you're responsible, and so you should know stuff.
And should be able to deliver, and be enough of a bump up to the other people can, get something from you, right? And that's, I think, but that's the same. I think it's more conscious when you're coming in externally, but I think progressing internally, it's the same. If you're taking on to manage a team, one of the hardest things is that shift to my job is now solely to add value to this other person that I'm now, or other people that I'm managing, right? Like you have to be able to give them something back. I definitely a believer that the leader works for the people in a team as much as the other way around, right? It's not like, hey, these are people in my team, they work for me. I think the leader works for them. You're enabling them to succeed in their role. They're generally the ones that are going to be either income producing or sales. So I think it's, this concept of the reverse org chart is I think really it's a good picture for me.
Yeah, I agree. Look, let's I meant to do this at the outset, but let's set the scene and do sort of like a rapid fire then and now type thing. So when you joined, what was the revenue of the business? When you became CEO, what was the revenue of the company?
Yeah, I can't even rough. It's somewhere in the 15 to 20 mark, because the timing was, as I said, it's kind of was an organic.
Yeah. Okay.
So it was somewhere in that 15 to 20 mil
ballpark's
range.
Fine. Yeah, and now it is?
About 65.
Cool. In terms of M&A, at the point that you joined, I know the answer to this. When you became CEO, there was none. Now there's been 7.
7, yeah.
Okay, great. Profitability percentage against peers. I don't know whether you've got this in your head as to what it was versus what it is, but you can just go with what it is if you prefer.
Yeah, I mean, look, we deliberately driven the profitability down quite low at the start to reinvest and to build up that management team. But, in the sort of 3 times or 3 to 4 times growth in revenue over that period is probably more like a 6 to 8 times profitability growth.
Nice. Okay. Staff growth. Let's do ANZ staff growth, and then we'll jump into Philippines.
Yeah, probably about double headcount onshore, but with almost 100 people in the Philippines now as well.
Right.
Yeah.
With our own company established over there with a couple of offices. Yeah. Cool. And then really the framework that you've adopted, the Gazelles framework. I guess what are the key things we should know about that?
Yeah, I mean, Peter first wanted to implement that as a way of, I guess, it was starting to hand the business over. So it was, I'd had some experience with it prior. And I remember him coming to a management team meeting and saying, "Oh, we're doing this thing called Gazelles. I went to a seminar, okay. and I was like, actually, I have seen it. I've tried to implement some of this stuff. Didn't really work, and it didn't work because there wasn't the rigor around keeping the discipline around keeping this stuff as part of the business. It kind of, like a lot of things, they
fade away, they drop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the bit that I guess took on was the and have continued to this day,
Very
as
much
you know,
the rigor's there for sure.
Yeah, like we've got an operating method in this business. Yeah.
Yep. The model does not shift.
Yeah.
The model is there.
Yeah. Well, look, it evolves, but it's deliberate choices to evolve it, and it's not just I forgot we were supposed to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And of course, you love me saying this. Published, albeit self-published author. The book. One of the probably more interesting things that I saw coming into the business was just that awareness and that sort of almost cultural playbook from the outset. Do you want to just touch on that quickly? I think it's worth mentioning.
Yeah. I mean, it came from that evolution of Gazelles to what we're doing now, the scaling up, which is kind of the first chapter almost of how we run the business. But we very much have a challenge as the business continue to scale. Probably one of the biggest, it sort of touches on a different topic really, which is one of the biggest challenges around having a business where you know everyone to now having a business where you don't know everyone.
Yeah.
And the book was an answer to that. It's to go, here's a brain dump of what the experienced people who've been here a long time do and think, and how we run the business, and to ensure that consistency of management culture. It's obviously the audience of the book is very much managers and team leaders, but everyone more broadly. But yeah, look, it was hopefully a unique ish idea. I mean, we wanted to make it a little bit fun as well, rather than here's a operations manual, and articulate the stuff that you pick up in a business over time, but we were seeing was harder and harder for new people to pick up, right? We just want to shortcut that journey.
Yeah, totally. And I guess just for anyone watching, to make it clear, what really happens is you come on board, you get given this book, and it really takes out the guesswork as to what matters. How should we be framing decisions? What are the things that we hold to be true? What do we value, and how do we communicate, and all those sorts of things. It just made it a lot faster. And if you want to win points with Ross, you reference the book. You remember some quotes. It's important. But okay, look, with that done, now let's talk about, I guess now that we've set you up to be someone that we should all listen to, let's talk about, I guess let's start with how, in your experience, does the role, the CEO role, differ from the next tier down, the C-level, the CTO, CCO, whatever? Like, what's the key difference in terms of responsibility, or maybe even just the experience of it?
I'll probably talk more broadly about the CEO role and talk. I spend a fair bit of time with other CEOs, and the exact makeup of the role does differ a little from company to company, but the one thing that is on the CEO's hat is that external version of the company, and that is whether that's out to customers and potential customers, but also every business, unless the CEO is the owner, every business has some sort of external party or person or people that they're accountable to, right? And so the CEO's job is a lot of time to manage owners, investors, market, private equity, a board. I mean, there's lots of different sort of versions of that, I guess. But probably the biggest thing, and in some ways the reason I ended up in a role here is the relationship upwards, the ability to manage up inside. You've got to manage. Everyone has to manage up, but to manage up and also but also take the wishes of, whoever's in charge from a, whether it's an owner or board or whatever, they're going to have specific things that they need from a, whether it's at a high level growth or profitability or risk level or whatever it might be that is coming from them, and translate that into action, I guess. So it's very much a conduit between the business that ultimately, if it's mature, it should run itself. Like the CEO shouldn't actually be needed to run the business. They should be able to step away, and the business should be able to run.
Past a certain size, I imagine, right? Like,
yeah, I mean, look, at too small, then you're probably not going to see the CEO title used anyway. I would think, but to have a CEO, very much the CEO's job is, in my view, it's that external stakeholder stuff. It's the vision and articulation of the vision, and so this is one that I'm a very strong believer in, and hence things like the book we've just talked about, is I think the CEO still owns culture, and hence why we deliberately avoid having a head of people and culture in the business, because I don't think you can give that to someone else in the executive team and say, hey, you're responsible for culture. So that, yes, you definitely have a head of people, but I think the CEO still needs to own culture.
Yeah, set that sort of set the direction for the business in that respect. I was just thinking the one issue I've seen for another CEO I know fairly well is just he's got a very dysfunctional board. One where the runway or the time frame within which they want to return and the form they want that return to take is not aligned at a board level.
Yeah.
How thankful are you to have a single shareholder?
Extremely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm through CEO peer groups, I would say that every time there's one of those sort of meetings, someone is there talking about their board. It amazes me that that's the case, because I mean, they're supposed to be there for the better, to make things better and actually provide a level of governance and oversight from a good reason. But you're right. I mean, it seems like it's just as common that it doesn't work or that it hamstrings, progress. But I haven't had that experience, and I'm not itching to have it.
No, I can imagine. I can absolutely imagine. All right, let's talk about once you were sort of formally put in that CEO role, what was maybe other than potentially having to manage up, which you'd probably already done pretty effectively at that point, hence you were where you were. What was one of the things or some of the things you had to learn, fairly fast once you started?
Look, I think the big changes, the things I had to learn were, as I said, real deep understanding of not just profitability, this month or this quarter, but deeper understanding of things like balance sheet and enterprise value, growing enterprise value, which is not always the same as just making it more profitable this quarter, right? So the kind of broader financial understanding. And aligning that with, again, in this case, what the owner's kind of intent is, right? So, so definitely a financial understanding has been probably one. It's not like that's something I kind of went through uni going, hey, I'm an accountant or whatever. That was on the job sort of learning, I guess, most of it. But definitely finance. The other one is the level of impact that like your words can have, and both in good and bad ways, right? So, really clearly communicating and over communicating what we're wanting to do, and not assuming that I've said it once, therefore we all get it now.
Yeah,
and so
I strongly believe in, just as you're getting sick of saying it for like the millionth time, people are hearing it for the first time.
Yeah,
you gotta keep saying it in different ways in different forums, formats.
Yeah, but I'd say the words on a down, there's an impact that your words can have when you're carrying a senior role, especially around other, newer staff members, people that, I definitely had to be more conscious about, not just speaking, actually,
choose your words carefully.
Yeah, because, even just jumping in on something on Slack or whatever, that's, you got to remember someone that doesn't have that relationship with me, that they're going to go home today going, oh, the CEO didn't think I did a good job, right? Like that. I think realizing the positive and negative impact of your role. And it's such a weird, like you mentioned before, org charts are, it's org structure. I mean, if we met on the street, we're all just people, and you go into this business and everyone has a, it's weird in a lot of ways, and it is almost uncomfortable, but it is the reality.
It is, yeah. Because we're all about clear, tangible takeaways on this, knowing that, the financial element can be quite a difficult one to get your head around, or at least there's a need to have a deep level of understanding, profit and loss, balance sheet, cash flow, etc. What would you suggest for someone who is looking to come into that role in terms of, formal training or industry groups or something that maybe would help them get their head around that?
Yeah, I was quite fortunate to have a good friend. He was an accountant who kind of taught me a bunch of stuff early on. When very, very early in my career, I had my own business for a little while. It was a very, very small one, but he would explain a lot of the stuff as we went, instead of just going, "Here's your financials back," right? Whatever. So, but I think that scales up to bigger business as well. Instead of kind of just getting the information back from whether it's internal finance team, from your accountant. Stop, ask lots of questions. Make sure, I understand why we've done that in that way, why that's important. So it's just, and everyone learns in different ways. For me, it wasn't about going off and doing a course. For some people, that might be the answer, right? So, there's obviously MBAs which, do focus very heavily on the finance side as opposed to other sides. Otherwise, there's plenty of short courses and that kind of stuff. But for me, it was, and I'm that questioner style person, I just ask until and not just end a conversation until I understand it.
Just badger the hell out of them until you get what you need. I like it. Cool. I mean, that's kind of my job here with the podcast, so that's fair enough. I think there you sort of touched on something, which is, that's not necessarily a mentor situation or even a peer group. It's a friend who has a set of skills and you are able to leverage that. Are there any specific peer groups or, sort of mentor opportunities that you would, again, put value in if you were to start out again?
Yeah, look, I'm a huge supporter of peer group format. I think it intensifies the learnings in experiences you can get from a bunch of businesses, because you don't get to see inside that many businesses that often if you just have to work there, right? Or you're hearing it from other people third hand. So being in a room for a day, a month with 12, 15 other CEOs, hearing about a lot of the problems that are similar, hearing about a lot of the solutions which differ, but you can bring some really cool things out from another industry or another context into your own, and I think that's really valuable. So, for me, I've been in Executive Connection for many years, even prior to being a CEO, because they do have key groups and other things like that. But CEO Institute is similar. We have some of our execs now in the CEO Institute, and I have also been involved in the ConnectWise Evolve and previously HTG peer groups, which are very industry specific, peer group, but that again, a very deep rooted kind of a financial base in those peer groups, which helped a lot from a financial side. So, but yeah, peer groups are I said, I'm a big supporter of myself, and therefore almost all of my direct team are in one as well. I think it's the learnings are great.
Scott, what you're already saying to me is coming back to what we really started this whole thing off with that whole sort of psychology deep dive, is if you think you know too much, you're not going to look for help. You're not going to look for opportunities to learn. You're not going to ask questions. So again, it seems like the common thread here is be self-aware and curious and challenge yourself to learn as much as possible, as often as possible.
Yeah, and even when you go to a listening to someone and it's like, oh yeah, I've heard this kind of topic before, but they might just say it a slightly different way or trigger something to lead you thinking down a path, or to at least come back to the business and be able to articulate something differently that you've struggled with before, or you only need to take one thing, 1-2 things away from a session to make it worthwhile. But you have to turn up with a mindset that's open to learn, Because if you turn up going, yeah, I know this, I know how to run a business, I know about strategy, I know about finance, that's.
I used to be like that. I reckon it set me back about 5 years in my 20s. I was so insecure that the thought of being open to learning made me feel like I didn't, like that they thought I didn't know enough. I don't know what the hell was wrong with me. But anyway, regret that period. But I was just going to say that I think even if you've heard it before, we just naturally, things drop out of frame. You know, we talked before about, you can have a framework and over time it drops off, and that hasn't happened here. But, there's just things that sometimes it doesn't hurt to get told again. It might have been 10 years since you heard it. You're like, oh man, that really resonates. I keep forgetting how good that was for that period or whatever. So it just, even if it's not necessarily new, it's good to have refreshers.
Yeah, for sure.
My next question is, when you come into the role of CEO, how do you balance the desire to make your mark with positive impact and taking the time to learn and find your feet and make sure that the thing you're thinking about or you don't essentially go too fast, too big?
Look, I think it's going to heavily depend on the overall phase the business is in. And so, you may have heard of the concept of the kind of wartime and peacetime sort of leader or CEO, right? And it's a case of, is the job to come in and maintain, or is the job to come in and make change? And you'll see, especially larger organizations, cycle between those two, right? You might need a disruptor to come in and do stuff for 2-3 years, but then you need someone to come in and not upset it. That's right. Yeah. And so I think it goes back a little bit to what phase the business is in, and the job as a CEO is to fit within that. Now, obviously, different personality types are better at one or the other. I know myself personally, I'm not a status quo, maintain guy.
Well, the figures we just went through before would attest to that. I think there's been a fair period of growth in the business that doesn't happen by standing still.
Yeah, but even there are people that, even though you might be maintaining from a revenue perspective, maybe you're improving profit. There's different levers, but it comes from that wanting to make your mark, comes from understanding what the mark is. And the mark can't be something just pure for vanity purposes. The mark has to be because that's what I was brought in to do. And so if you're thinking about, like we said, coming in externally, there's going to be a reason that you've gone to market for a CEO. And the first conversation you'll be having is why? What are you actually trying to solve? What are you trying to achieve here? And having recently gone through that process of hiring a COO, conversation was the same. Why are we going to market? Why are we going to market for a COO? Why wasn't there someone internally? What is the problem we're trying to solve here? What does success look like in 90 and 180 days? And those questions are the same probably for any C-level role. Okay. So I mean, I don't know if that answered the how do you balance it? I think you can't make change before you know what the impact of that change is going to be. I think you can risk things to a certain point, but you should only do something if some level, if you know how it's going to work out, if you know what I mean. You need that surety first. And if you're going in and just doing stuff, you're rolling the dice.
Fair. Okay. One thing that's probably a little less businessy and maybe a little more personal, but I think it would be interesting for people because I do think that, again, maybe putting my own lens on this a bit much, but it's a very it's not all or nothing, but it's a very intensive role, right? It's on the company outcome is on your shoulders. So there's going to be less personal time. There's going to be less family time, I assume. I guess what I'm building up here to is what have you had to sacrifice to do well in this role?
Yeah, there is a choice that, like you said, that comes along with it. It's not. A lot of people would say many jobs are not 9-to-5 jobs anymore, right? But certainly a normal work day or work week doesn't exist. But that's not as bad as it seems either, because it gives you flexibility to work to your life as well, and you can choose to let it kind of control you, or you can choose to control it, if you know what I mean. Some of the best ideas come when you're not at your desk, you know what I mean? So, that's why for me, the one thing I consciously do is, I think right now I'm in a negative leave balance. I'd make sure I take time off, but even when I'm on leave, if I'm hiking up a mountain, I mean, I'm still, that gives me really good thinking time to come back having done, and, with some really cool ideas, right? And during that time, even though I am still maybe checking my phone occasionally, or again, I don't mind doing that. Yes, you are somewhat intruding onto personal time, and so you have to have very understanding people around you to do that. But again, you're not going to pick up your phone in the middle of dinner all the time, and there are times to do it and times not to. But I think, as I said, for me, the lines are very much blurred between work and life, but not in a bad way. I think that it's again sort of comes back to the having a purpose of why you're there. Like, you should align with your life purpose.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Is I was going to say maybe the sacrifice is not having an off switch, maybe, so that it's always somewhat there triggering the background. But I don't think it's a sacrifice as much as just the reality of a C-level role or even a management role, and in some cases just a service industry role maybe. Like it's not you get home or you clock off and you're out. It's very hard to do that. Your brains don't really work that way. So I don't know. Yeah,
and you need to be very self-aware of when you are getting stressed or overworked, or my workload's too high. And the one thing I've probably become meticulous about is schedule management, and sort of knowing that I'm full this week, and I can't just say yes to one more thing, or if I do, what am I not going to do? So I think there's definitely many people I know in the role that have that work far too much, and have a lot of sleep problems is a big thing in a role, as people find it hard to turn off at night. And if things are going badly, well, it's not surprising really, because there is that personal connection to it, and almost, I say, maybe guilt, or there is that, it's on your shoulders. Thankfully, times have been pretty good, and we haven't had those kind of disasters where you have to come in and tomorrow I have to make 50 people redundant or something. And I must say, I don't, I can't imagine what that would be like. And I'm very grateful to not have to, having had those conversations, because that's a different level of stress and personal impact that, as I said, I think would weigh pretty heavy on me.
Yeah. That's probably because you're not a terrible person.
No,
that's good. I have to say that, you're right here and it's on camera. But the how to get fired with Brendan. Anyway, the point you made there before about going hiking and getting those thoughts, right? I've found my wife's always saying to me, why do you have to always have something in your ears, or be listening to something? Why do you always have to have noise? And about the time I get the most ideas is if I'm in the water and I literally can't have any electronics on me. Yeah. So I'm having to swim, and it actually does just give me personally the space to just think. Yeah. And so I totally get what you're saying there. And it's not like it's an intrusion of work into my space. Like, that actually helps. Like there is no clear distinction. It's, I want to be good at work because that helps me in my life, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, that resonates anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Let's see. One other question, actually, just in terms of sacrifice. You are a capable person, somewhat of a, I want to say nerd, but that would be the wrong term.
Well, that's true though.
Okay, cool, great. Yeah. But you get to do that less now, right? Like, you're very much a strategy, relationships, culture guy. Do you miss it? Is that a thing you've had to kind of just consciously go, nah, that's fine?
I miss parts of it. I still get involved, and I get to choose the bits I get involved in. And so there are definitely some internal projects and initiatives that I will assign myself to, because they are fun, because I like the technology, I like the software implementation process, or the specifically using technology to have an impact. I mean, that comes back to what our whole business is about. So I think if someone looked externally about the things that are part of on my plate, it'd be like, why is the CEO doing that? It's because I like it. And I don't want to give some of that stuff up. But
and you don't have to, because you're the boss. So let me do it. Yeah.
Now, that means I can implement it and then hand it over to someone, right? I mean, and that's very important, to not just end up being all about keeping things on your plate again. But I think it's an important part of running a technology company that you stay connected. I don't want to just be a person that looks at spreadsheets and talks to banks, right? Like that's part of the job. But no different to if you're a managing partner in a law firm or in accounting, like you still need to be an expert on the topic at some level. And I think our clients get a better outcome because of it. Because at some level we are still technically led. Yeah, I'm not going to do their server project for them, but I'm still always thinking about how can we use technology here, how can we use technology here to do this, and getting hands-on and actually doing some of it. So I think it's the value that you can add as the CEO in some ways is to still have some level of being the expert on the topic.
Yeah, and that's whether you come from like the sort of sales channel or the marketing or the technical or whatever. It's just retain that level of whatever it is and be prepared to sort of insert that expertise when required.
Yeah, and there's obviously a lot of conversation about can you then go into another industry and run a business in another industry? We've had a lot of conversations with people over the years around that. Is are CEO skills transferable? Can I go and run a hospitality business or a retail and I think while it's possible, it just amplifies the back to you talking about, like, you're coming in as an outsider, like, hang on, this person doesn't even know anything about the business, right? So while I think that it's possible, it's a lot harder. So yeah, I'm a big proponent of still retaining a level of expertise and not letting it go out of date, which in our sector
happens quick.
It happens a lot quicker.
So quick. All right, last question for you before I let you go. What have you seen in other CEOs or leaders that you really sort of look up to or have tried to implement in your own role?
Patience. There's a lot of the people I spend time with that have similar roles are, they're able to be a lot more considered sometimes with whether it's with their words or actions. I'm probably a little more action orientated. I've really been trying to turn that on and off a little more. And I think that again, as the company gets bigger, it's expected in that role that you can just come with that little bit more
circumspect, calm sort of. Yeah. Having said that though, and I think it's a great answer, but I do think that it's like if you don't swear very often, when you do swear, it has a real impact. Like, oh, what? They must be serious. They did that, right? I think there's a room to be however you need to be, but it's just the less it's done, the more impactful it is my theory.
Yeah.
Hope that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay. We should probably leave it there. That is a great episode. Thank you very much. Hopefully, any of you out there who are looking to get some insights as to what the CEO role looks like took all of that in. There will, of course, be some notes where we'll try and summarize the key points on YouTube as well. Thanks for joining in. Please, of course, like, rate, subscribe, all that kind of good stuff. And we'll see you in a couple of weeks.